which is the appointment of a facilities manager effective September 27th, 2021. Nuno George of Swansea, Massachusetts. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so we went, as you're aware, when we started this whole process back at budget time, we had a combined position of an assistant highway superintendent and a facilities manager. We took that job description, we placed an ad, we went into the Fall River Herald, we went on our website, we went to the MMA, we posted it. We ended up receiving 9 resumes. Based on the screening that the town administrator and myself did, we narrowed it down to 4 that we invited in for interviews. Based on those 4, and based on what again, I'll say this is my recommendation. I'll let the town administrator speak for herself. Based on what I looked at and what I was looking at, I felt that Mr. George was the appropriate candidate to do what I believe needs to be done in this town. For 20 years, we've neglected buildings. For 20 years, we haven't seen anything done, and we get complaints from residents that the buildings are falling down and everything else. Mr. George has demonstrated to me, at least in the temporary time frame, that he has been capable of doing these things. He's been down and dealing with the Bluffs building. He's, without having to, excuse me, that was a bug in front of my face. He's been dealing with the Bluffs building, he's been dealing with the library, he's been dealing with issues at the annex. He's been dealing with issues at the town hall. Okay, now he doesn't have the most experience related to facilities manager that maybe that he should, but he also has experience on the highway, on my assistant highway superintendent. Again, as you know, my workload's off the case, so I looked at this position when I originally thought of it as, we need a facilities person to stop the nonsense of every director in town is calling this person, that person, and everyone else. So at one time, we could have 3 plumbers in town. We could have 2 HVAC guys in town. We could have a lot of issues. So I was looking at, well, we need to streamline this. We need someone to manage this. It's a project management position type of thing to me. That's the way I was looking at this. But at the same time, I need this person to be able to oversee construction projects we're doing on roadways, Cummings Road, Pierce Road. Again, I need someone to look at that as well. Again, so I looked at it as a facilities manager that was going to be busy at first, trying to determine what needs to be done in these buildings, what needs to be fixed, which kind of, and I think about it with what's going on with the RFP, with the mall and everything else, I think that position is going to change drastically. But at least now with the dual position, I think it's something that I can have someone working and doing work. So that's why I looked at, we had the individuals that we interviewed. We had an individual from Canton that was a facilities manager, but he had no experience doing anything else. He also had 7 people working under him. And the issue of, not that he said he was going to have issue with only him doing work, but it was clear from his resume that he just had all these other people doing the work for him. But he had no superintendent. He had no, on the other end of things, he had no highway superintendent. He had, he thought the job was going to be just plowing snow, and that was it. He was my second choice. Of the other 2, the third and fourth choices of the people we interviewed, they weren't going to meet the qualifications of what we wanted. Again, I have a good working relationship with Nuno. I won't say I don't. And I think it will work if he's working under me, and all of this is going to fall under my responsibility, me and him, between myself and him, trying to get things done, it's going to work. That's why I'm recommending that I would recommend that we move forward with hiring him as the facilities manager and promoting from within.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Gentlemen, so I'll open the floor for discussion. Mr. Kitchen.
Before we have any discussion, I'd like to hear from our town administrator and as it relates to the process.
Okay. Ms. Aaronstein, floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. So I firmly support this recommendation. I concur with Mr. Anderson. We held these interviews in this room, and there wasn't one candidate that had it all. So, going into it, we knew that there were going to be some bits of leeway for anybody that we hired, and it was between Mr. George and this other candidate. And Nuno has been an employee of this town since 2004. He's professional, he's courteous, he is a go-getter. He does not say that's not in my job description. He does not shirk off a challenge. He has been there for us when we took on the bathhouse. He's been there for us, helping us figure out what we're supposed to do with the library, and it's an old building. He has proved himself to be communicative, polite. He met on his own time with the beach committee to hammer out details of who was going to take over the bathhouse on his own time. That initiative is very impressive to me. It's something I like to see. I give out a trophy for it. It is the above and beyond thing. I completely believe he rose to the top. It's a bonus that he's able to be appointed from within. I like when that happens. He also has buildings and grounds maintenance experience from his previous position back before he joined the town of Swansea. Our process is something I follow with every single hire we do. I put the job out. I make sure the job description is current. I receive the applications and I don't look at them until the due date. I go through it and I write down who I think we should interview. Whoever my interviewing partner is, I give them the same opportunity. Anybody that makes both lists goes forward. We were lucky enough to have a lot of the similar people on our list, Mr. Anderson and I. There were some that I liked. I brought them up to Bill. He told me, his reservations, and I agreed. So we held our interviews, we checked references, we made follow-up phone calls, just to make sure that we were making the best decision that we could. Bill and I know the needs of this community right now at this moment in time, and we do need a little extra assistance in our highway area. We do need help in our facilities, but as Mr. Anderson has said, if we are able to move to new offices, a lot of that work kind of goes by the wayside in that sense. If not, we're prepared to take care of that, but we believe this is an excellent fit, and neither of us would be here asking you to appoint him if we didn't.
Thank you, Ms. Aaronstein. So, Mr. Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just have a couple of questions after, and you can assist me in a long ways in terms of my final decision on this project, or this position, rather. Under the certification section of the job description, there was a requirement, and I read, and I quote, must possess a Massachusetts construction supervisor's license, which I admit to you, I have no idea what that is, or the ability to obtain such license within 1 year of hire. Is there, I did not see any indication on the recommended candidate's resume for having this license, which may be an oversight, or maybe he does not have this license.
He does not have it.
And so the or then comes into effect. Are we convinced that in a year's period from the time that we make this appointment, that he will be able to secure that particular license? Because it goes a great deal to making sure that we follow the
Correct.
job description that we posted.
So
Whoever's qualified to answer that question.
I'll go first. All right, so I'm going to work with him to make sure that, and I can see what he can do to get him to get that license. It's what it was a requirement. That was what was asked for by the A&F. So it was in the job description. So we're going to have to see if we can work to get him to get that license.
And in your opinion, it's possible within a year?
Again, I haven't looked at all the full requirements. I'll be the first to tell you that. But I don't see why I can't talk to the state and trying to see what we can do to try and get that there.
Okay. Other questions that I had as it related to this was, in the job description itself, I want to make sure that the use of the term facilities management is not confused with owner's project management. Am I correct that those are really two separate functions
Yes.
in any
Yes.
project
Absolutely.
of government, that an owner's project
even
manager?
close to
And
one.
I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, Mr. Chairman, thank you. That there is no inference in this job description that this person is going to be acting as an owner's project manager. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's the owner's project manager has to be an engineer, or usually it's generally a consultant.
And I'm always one to read between the lines in terms of symbolism. So I'm going to ask the following question. It's going to seem a little ridiculous, but I think you'll understand my intent. Under the facilities manager position or description, there are 10 items of responsibility in the description, whereas in the assistant highway superintendent, there are 15 items of responsibilities, yet in the pecking order of how they're listed, the facilities management came first, and the assistant highway superintendent came second. Is that a matter of just, it was the way it was laid out, or is it a matter of design and intent that that's the way it appears?
No, it was the latter. I just put them together. We were looking for a facilities manager. I also was looking for an assistant highway. I've been upfront with that from the beginning. So again, I didn't think that initially that the facilities person was gonna be full-time busy doing facility stuff, but at some point, he was gonna slow down, and what's he gonna do then? So with the secondary role, he could actually start helping out at highway. That's what way I looked at it. And again, it wasn't, I had both, here's what I need from both of them, this is what I want. This is what we would like to see.
I'm asking these questions because I have a great deal of faith. And I've always placed a great deal of faith in my 4 years on this board, in the recommendations that come from your predecessor, Mr. McAuliffe, and Mr. Anderson, your input, and the fire chief, and the police chief, and other department heads who come before us. And again, this goes back to that discussion we had earlier this evening about the functions of government and how we become the appointing authority on almost every position within municipal government, and whether or not that's something we should be focused on. But nevertheless, at this point in time, we have to be. It is the nature of our bylaws. And I just want to make sure that I'm consistent in saying that I believe that our leaders need to have workers around them that they trust, have faith in, and have confidence in. It appears to me that based upon the responses to your question, to the questions that I've asked, that you have a high degree of faith and a high degree of trust in this candidate. I know Nuno George, obviously, from his role as foreman, and I concur that I believe he is an excellent worker for this community. I just want to make sure we're making the right fit for the right position. And it seems to me the two of you are telling me, Mr. Kitchen, have no fear, this is the right fit. Is that what you're saying to me tonight?
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. Mr. Carrero?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So this position is salaried position. There's no overtime in connection with this position?
No.
So this basically, Nuno would be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to supplement your operation.
Just like
And
I am
your
right now.
oversight.
Correct.
Look, I have firsthand have seen Nuno work for this community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether he's on the clock or he's off the clock. He says jump. You say jump, he says how high. It doesn't even matter who it is. That's just the type of person that he is. He's a very, very hard worker, and he takes a lot of pride in the work that he does. And I weigh heavily Mr. Anderson's recommendation because at the end of the day, Mr. Anderson, this is going to be your right-hand man for all the projects and all the oversight for the highway department and our facilities in the community. I understand that Nuno might not have checked all the boxes on the job description or the requirements, but I know that if he's supplementing your professional experience and your credentials, Mr. Anderson, that he'll be able to get the job done and exceed our expectations because that's the type of gentleman that he is. So I have no reservations about appointing Nuno if that's your recommendation, Mr. Anderson. Nothing
Thank you,
further.
Mr.
Chairman.
Carrero. Ms. Aaronstein, Mr. Anderson, so I think I was critical of this position from day one, because when this all became sort of a process, I said a couple things, and I used my own personal professional experience. I have 100,000 square foot of buildings that I manage. I have 3 full-time facilities managers, 3 to manage 100,000 square foot. I can imagine we have sizable square footage in this community. The reality of finding someone to fit this bill for this pay is extremely difficult. It's an impossible to find somebody who has plumbing background, carpentry background, electrical background. They don't exist. They're not out there. Okay, and I have filled these jobs many of times. They don't exist. When I read this job description, what it reads to me is you are looking for someone who is going to be an expert in logistics and coordination. That is what you're looking for according to this job description. Because the reality of it is it's impossible to find one person who's going to be good at all those disciplines. They don't exist. If Nuno George is really good at logistics and coordination, then he's the guy for the job, because that's what you're looking for in this job description. Nowhere in here does it say that the applicant is going to be responsible for putting a roof on a building. Nowhere does it say they're going to be responsible for fixing the F-150 truck. This is a lot of logistics and coordination and ensuring that functions in town happen. And at the salary range that we're paying, that's what you're going to get. Because the reality of if you want somebody to do higher level work than that, you're going to pay a heck of a lot more money than this. And our town needs to understand that. You know, a vice president of finance or a facility, something like that, you're 6 figures. That's what it's going to cost. And the reality of it, if this is the right time and the right fit, and Nuno's the guy to do it, then I'm going to support the appointment. All I'm getting at in my conversation is the reality of it is we've got to continue to see how this works and model and redefine as we go. Because what we believe we might need today could change in 2 years from now.
Correct.
And that's where the town also has to get its head around that it may cost you more money to have what you ultimately want. That's for the A&F to understand. That's for the Board of Selectmen to understand. That's how this works. If we want that level of service, then we're going to have to compensate for that level of service. I have no reservations in appointing Nuno George to this job because I know what he gives to this community. I watch it. There are so many people who call me on a day in and day out basis during snowstorms and say, Nuno's there. Things are getting done. There's been 0 complaints to me ever about Nuno George. 0. So I have no concerns at this point. I also value what these people have to work with you. I'm not working with them on a day in and day out basis. And I can understand how important trust is in the person that's right beside you.
Correct.
So I have nothing further to offer. I'll entertain a motion on this appointment if we are prepared.
I would just like one follow-up opportunity, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. I do not want my comments about the review of the process or the description to infer that I have any reservations about Nuno George. I just want to make sure that we all know what we've committed to here. And that I feel that we have a job description that we need to make sure that we follow. And that if it doesn't get followed, obviously, any one of us could ask questions later on down the road, for example, regarding that licensure. And say, okay, what happened here and what are we doing to make sure it happens? And to make sure that the process had rigor. I've been assured that it did, and your comments and Bill's comments tonight assure me of that. I just want to make sure that people understand what the rationale for my asking these questions are, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that, Mr.
We got a job description, we need to follow it. We need to make sure that we live with the terms of that job description. As long as we're all understanding that, I'll make a motion to appoint Nuno George as Assistant Highway Superintendent, Facilities Manager.
Second.
Effective September 27, 2021.
That is correct.
There's a motion. There is a second.
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Please congratulate Mr. George.